This is our translation of the first 3 chapters in 1 Kings. What a story.
Yeah.
Now King David was old and advanced in years, and they covered him with garments, but he could not keep warm. Therefore his servants said to him, "Let them seek a young virgin for my lord the king, and let her stand before the king, and let her be of service to him, and lie in your bosom, so that my lord the king may be warm." So they sought for a beautiful young woman throughout all the territory of Israel, and they found Abishag the Shunammite, and they brought her to the king. And the young woman was very beautiful, and she began attending to the king and ministering to him, but the king did not know her. Now Adonijah, the son of Haggith, had exalted himself, saying, "I will be king." That was David's oldest surviving son. And he prepared for himself chariots and horsemen and 50 men to run before him. And his father had not grieved him at any time by saying, "Why have you done this?" He also was very handsome, and his mother bore him after Absalom. Absalom's dead. Moreover, he conferred with Joab ben Zeruiah and with Abiathar the priest, and they followed Adonijah and helped him. But Zadok the priest and Benaiah ben Jehoiada and Nathan the prophet and Shimei and Rei and those who were David's mighty men were not with Adonijah. And Adonijah sacrificed sheep and cattle and fatlings near the stone of Zoheleth, which is beside En-Rogel. And En-Rogel is a fountain right outside of the walls of Jerusalem. And he called all his brothers, sons of the king, and all the men of Judah, servants of the king. However, Nathan the prophet, or Benaiah, or the mighty men, or Solomon his brother, he did not call. I wonder why he didn't invite them. Well, then Nathan spoke to Bathsheba, Solomon's mother, saying, "Have you not heard that Adonijah ben Haggith has begun to reign, and David our Lord does not know? Therefore come, let me, I beg you, give you counsel that you may escape, and your son Solomon." Because he knew that Adonijah would get rid of him. "Go and enter into David the king and say to him, O king, my lord, did you not swear to your handmaid, saying, Solomon your son shall certainly be king after me, and he shall sit on my throne? Why then is Adonijah king? And behold, while you are still there speaking to the king, I will come in after you and confirm your words." Say it twice to the king to get the point across. He's dying, you know. And Bathsheba went into the king to his chamber. Now the king was very old, and Abishag the Shunammite was ministering to the king. And Bathsheba bowed and prostrated herself before the king, and the king said, "What do you want?" Then she said to him, "My lord, you swore to your handmaid by Jehovah your God, saying, Solomon your son shall certainly be king after me, and he shall sit on my throne. But behold, Adonijah has now become king, even though, my lord the king, you did not know. Also, he has sacrificed a multitude of oxen, and fatlings, and sheep, and he has called all the king's sons, and Abiathar the priest, and Joab the captain of the army, but Solomon your servant he did not call. And you, my lord the king, the eyes of all Israel are upon you, to make known to them who should sit upon the throne of my lord the king after him. Otherwise it will come to pass that when my lord the king sleeps with his fathers, and I and my son Solomon will be condemned as offenders." Because Adonijah knew Solomon was supposed to be king, and get rid of him. And behold, while she was still speaking with the king, Nathan the prophet came in, and they announced to the king, "Behold, Nathan the prophet." Now when they did that, it doesn't tell you right here, you find out in a few verses, Bathsheba got out of there. It's just David and Nathan talking. And he entered in before the king and prostrated himself before the king with his face to the ground. And Nathan said, My lord the king, have you said Adonijah will reign after me, and he will sit on my throne? For he has gone down today and is sacrificing a multitude of oxen and fatlings and sheep, and he has called all the king's sons and captains of the army, and Abiathar the priest. And behold, they are eating and drinking before him, and they are saying, Long live King Adonijah! But me, your servant, and Zadok the priest, and Benaiah ben Jehoiada, and Solomon your servant, he did not call. If this thing has been done by my lord the king, then you did not tell your servant, who will sit on the throne of my lord the king after him. Then David the king answered and said, Call Bathsheba to me. And she entered into the king's presence and stood before the king. And the king swore and said, As Jehovah lives, who has redeemed my life from all distress, just as I swore to you by Jehovah the God of Israel, saying, Surely Solomon your son shall be king after me, and he shall sit on my throne in my stead, so I will certainly do this day. Then Bathsheba bowed her face to the earth and prostrated herself before the king and said, Let my lord King David the king live forever. And King David said, Call Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet and Benaiah ben Jehoiada to me. And they came in before the king, and the king said to them, Take the servants of your lord with you, and have my son Solomon to ride on my own mule, and bring him down to Gihon. That's another fountain right outside the walls of Jerusalem, a little farther down south, I think. They're not far apart. And Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet shall anoint him there over Israel, and shall blow with a shofar, that's a trumpet, and declare, Long live King Solomon. Then you shall go up after him, and he shall come in and sit upon my throne, and he shall reign in my stead. For I have commanded to be ruler. For him have I commanded to be ruler over Israel and over Judah. And Benaiah ben Jehoiada answered the king and said, Amen. May Jehovah the God of my lord the king say so. As Jehovah has been with my lord the king, so may he be with Solomon, and make his throne greater than the throne of my lord David, King David. Then Zadok the priest went down, and Nathan the prophet, and Benaiah ben Jehoiada, and the Kerethites and Pelethites, they were Philistines. David spent a lot of time in Philistia, and some of the Philistines loved David. They became, not Israelites did not. The Philistines, the Kerethites and Pelethites, were his personal bodyguard. That's how much David trusted them. That's how much they loved David. Foreigners were David's personal bodyguard. He trusted them more than he did Israelis. And they mounted Solomon on King David's mule and brought him to Gihon. And Zadok the priest took the horn of oil from the tent and anointed Solomon, and they blew with the shofar, and all the people said, Long live King Solomon. And all the people came up after him, and the people were piping with pipes and rejoicing with great joy, such that the earth was rent with the sound of them. Well, now, Adonijah and his party is not far, just around the bend. Then Adonijah and all the guests with him heard it, and they stopped eating. And Joab heard the sound of the shofar and said, Why is the sound of an uproar in the city? And while he was yet speaking, behold, Jonathan, the son of Abiathar the priest, came in. Then Adonijah said, Oh, come in, for you are a valiant man, and you bring good tidings. And Jonathan answered and said to Adonijah, Truly our Lord David the king has made Solomon king. And the king has sent him Zadok the priest, and Nathan the prophet, and Benaiah ben Jehoiada, and the Kerethites and Pelethites, and they made him to ride upon the king's mule. And Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet anointed him king in Gihon, and they have gone up from there rejoicing, and the city is in an uproar. This is the sound that you heard. And now Solomon is sitting on the throne of the kingdom before David dies. He beat you. And also the king's servants have come to bless our Lord King David, saying, May your God make the name of Solomon better than your name, and his throne greater than your throne. And then the king worshipped on the bed. And the king also said this, Blessed be Jehovah God of Israel, who this day has granted a man to sit on my throne while my eyes can see it. And all who were called, who were for Adonijah, were terrified, and they stood up and departed. Each man went his way. The party was over. I got to write a note here. I got to make this thing ship shape. Adonijah was also afraid because of Solomon. And he arose and departed and took hold of the horns of the altar. He went to the tent that David had pitched for God's altar and for the Ark of the Covenant. And if you look at pictures of ancient altars, no matter what culture they're in, you find many of them had 4 bumps on the 4 corners. They call them horns of the altar. That's what you went and grabbed onto in dire emergencies when your life was on the line, like you're begging that God to save you. Then it was reported to Solomon, saying, Behold, Adonijah fears Solomon the king, and behold, he has taken hold of the horns of the altar, saying, Let King Solomon swear to me this day that he will not put his servant to death with the sword. Then Solomon said, If he's deserving, not a hair of his will fall to the ground. But if evil be found in him, then he will die. And King Solomon sent, and they brought him down from the altar, and he came in and bowed himself to Solomon the king. Then Solomon said to him, Go home. That's the end of chapter 1. Any questions, comments, spitballs? Nothing? Okay. Damien, you want to read the next chapter?
Now the days of David drew near that he should die. He commanded Solomon his son, saying, I am going the way of all the earth. Therefore be strong, yea, be a man, and keep the charge of Jehovah your God, to walk in his ways, to keep his statutes, his commandments, and his judgments, and his testimonies, just as it is written in the law of Moses, so that you may prosper in all that you do and wherever you turn. So that Jehovah may establish his word which he spoke to me, saying, If your sons take heed to their way, to walk before me faithfully with all their heart and with all their soul, you will never fail, he said, to have a man upon the throne of Israel. Moreover, you also know what Joab, the son of Zeruiah, did to me, what he did to the 2 captains of the armies of Israel, to Abner ben Ner, and to Amasa ben Jether, that he slew them and shed the blood of war in peacetime, spilling blood of war on his belt that was about his loins, on his sandals that were on his feet. Therefore do according to your wisdom, and do not allow his grey hair to go down to Sheol in peace.
So he sees trouble for Solomon after he dies from these men. So he said, you got to take care of Joab. He's a murderer. He's a liar. He's a deceiver. Deal with him the way he's dealt with righteous men before him.
But deal kindly with the sons of Barzillai the Gileadite, and let them be among those who eat at your table. For thus they came to me when I fled from before Absalom your brother.
Yeah, David was desperate, and Barzillai met him. brought him food and other things.
Behold, also with you is Shimei ben Gera, the Benjamite from Bahurim, who cursed me with a grievous curse on the day I fled to Mahanaim. But he came down to meet me at the Jordan, and I swore to him by Jehovah, saying, May God damn me if I put you to death by the sword. But do not now leave him unpunished, for you are a wise man, and you will know what you should do to him. But bring his grey head with blood to Sheol. Down.
That's number 2 guy. You got to get rid of that guy.
Then David slept with his fathers, and he was buried in the city of David. Now the days that David reigned over Israel were 40 years. He reigned 7 years in Hebron, and he reigned 33 years in Jerusalem. And Solomon sat upon the throne of David his father, and his kingdom was greatly established. And Adonijah the son of Haggith went to Bathsheba, mother of Solomon, and she said, Do you come peacefully? Then he said, Peacefully.
That was a lie.
Yeah. Then he said, I have something to say to you. And she said, Speak. Then he said, You know that the kingdom would have been mine, and that all Israel had set their faces on me to be king. But the kingdom is turned about and has become my brother's, for it was his from Jehovah.
Well, that statement really,
Well,
you know the kingdom was mine, but Jehovah gave it to him. How was the kingdom his if God gave it to Solomon? That's just the way a sinful mind thinks.
So as things are, I would make one request of you. Do not refuse me. And she said to him, Speak. Then he said, If you will, speak to Solomon the king, for he will not refuse you, that he give me Abishag the Shunammite to wife.
Now, whoever got the previous king's wife was king. That was standard.
And Bathsheba said, Very well, I will speak to the king for you.
Now, here's another question. I've had Old Testament classes debating this. Did she know what Solomon's reaction would be, or was she really gullible? What do you think? Did Solomon's mother Bathsheba know that this was going to be Adonijah's death? Or did she just bebop in there and say, Solomon, can you give her Abishag? Sweetie pie? Honey brain?
The other chapter said she went into David and said that he'd have his killed. But things slip away from him. If you don't really pay attention to him.
She knew what Abishag would have done to her.
Yeah.
What do you think, Jacob? Think about it, Buddy Rowe.
I don't think she was gullible. I think she knew it was his death because she knew that, like you said, what you do to her.
Everybody agree with Jacob?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, you do, eh? You got a fan over here, Jacob.
Same.
I'm not so sure.
Same.
I'm leaning towards her just being gullible about it.
She was probably old too.
Later
She's
on.
old too.
Yeah, but later on, Solomon kind of says something back to her, don't he? When she,
When she asked, yeah.
he says, would you have?
Yeah.
So that makes it sound like stupid.
So, Aaron, you're in the minority.
Yeah.
I'm there.
Your denomination is getting mighty small here. Well, Otis is with
I'm
you.
with you.
Yeah.
Earl, too.
Oh, boy.
Capital W.
She wasn't technically his wife, though, right?
No, she wasn't technically his wife, but she had been in the king's bedchamber. That was as far as you needed to go.
It says that she's his wife. So
Yeah.
she's his wife.
Yeah, the Bible said so, so there it was. What do you think, Samuel? Was she gullible or was she conniving? Crafty?
I think she was crafty because if she'd been living like with David her whole life, she would have probably known the ins and outs.
Well, she didn't live with him her whole life, but she lived,
Or well, for
well, Solomon was wrong. Since Solomon was born, right before then, she's seen a lot of this kind of stuff. What do you think, Aaron?
For her to tell Solomon, do not refuse me. I want to ask you something. Don't refuse me. It just, if she was conniving, she was very conniving.
That made her craftiness
But
all the
that's
more
what he said
crafty.
to her.
What?
She just used the same words that he used on her. Don't refuse me.
That's right. Passed
She
him
just
right along. She was a
yeah.
faithful messenger.
Yeah, but Solomon kind of gets on her a little bit.
Yeah.
Ashley, what do you think? You look so sweet and innocent back there.
I don't know. I would guess that she, I know there are women.
Can't hear her.
They can't,
I know
Junior
women
can't
can
hear
be
you.
very conniving.
Submarine.
She says she's crafty.
If they're right.
Is that what you think, Beth? Is that what you would have done?
No. I wouldn't do it.
But she may have been trying to stay alive herself. She may have thought, hey, this is one person that would like us to be in Solomon dead. So let's just me go in there and just,
Yeah, that's
I
true.
think she was pretty smart.
What?
I
Who
said
said?
that's true, what Junior said.
What did he say? I didn't hear a thing.
Well, what I think I heard was, Bathsheba knew that Abiathar would, if he was on the throne, he would.
Adonijah.
Huh?
Adonijah.
Oh, okay, I'm lost. One of them on the throne was going to kill Bathsheba, and so she would want to get rid of that guy.
So you think she was a cunning?
Yeah, I think she was kind of.
What was
She was
that?
going to play the game and.
What?
What was Adonijah's plan? Because did you think Solomon would just fall for it and be gullible as well?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Couldn't hear.
What was Adonijah thinking?
Can't hear you.
Didn't Adonijah know what Solomon would do? He knew what he was asking for.
Yeah.
Maybe he thought because she was his mom, he would just do what she told him.
That's
But I
the
think,
way the mind thinks sometimes.
Well, did you say the king's wife was for the next king? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I mean, he inherited the harem.
Do you think he was asking for more than just the wife then?
You think Adonijah would do
I didn't mean it like that. I meant like that in his mindset, he was like, okay, I got the wife, now I'm getting more people on my side.
Well, that's a possibility. That's a chess move.
Hey, John,
Yeah,
is that the same girl in the very first chapter?
yeah.
There's a slight technicality. The king did not know her in verse 4.
That's what Adonijah's counting on. He wouldn't ask for it if the king hadn't known it.
So she technically wasn't his wife.
Well, the Bible says she was. Of course, the Bible hadn't been written. But she had been with the king, trying to keep him warm in bed. That was far enough to count, I think.
The do not refuse me, I always, whenever I've read that, I've always taken that as she's asking Solomon for her to be in his presence to ask a question. So do not refuse me, let me ask the question.
Well, do not refuse me what I'm
Request.
about to ask you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Don't bring in a whole nother problem.
Well,
What do you think, Michael?
I think that Bathsheba would put herself in a precarious situation by asking such a dumb question that I'm surprised she agreed to do it, unless she felt like she was going to surely get away with it.
What do you mean get away with?
I would think that someone would be like, how could you ask me such
Well,
a
he is like
Yeah,
that.
he is.
What do you mean by she thought she would get away with it?
that he would forgive her.
Who? Is Solomon?
Yes.
Forgive her and do what?
Well, I'm saying, why would you? I would feel so embarrassed and awkward to go ask the king that question.
Well,
So-
somebody's got to take Abishag.
I don't know, it doesn't make, it's fishy to me, something's.
What was your answer though, Michael? Did he ever say?
Yeah, I don't know what the answer is.
I don't know, because I don't get how she could, in good faith, go and ask her son to do that when, if the custom is that's the king's new wife, then, and especially that he wanted to get the kingdom. If I was Solomon, I'd look at her and be like, "You're asking me what?"
Yeah.
So
But
surely
she thought she could get away with it.
yeah, sure, but surely she would know that would be his response.
So you're with the people that say she was crafty.
Yeah.
Or just really stupid.
Is she a
Don't
really
sit on the
gullible,
fence.
stupid woman, or is she a really crafty woman? That's the whole issue.
Could it have been that she was neither? Well,
Hey, a
Adonijah,
third option.
Adonijah approached her and prefaced the conversation with, "You know, I'm the man that just about was able to take your head off.
Yeah.
Now, you might want to consider what I'm about to ask you." And maybe she was afraid because if her son was weak, this guy's going to take power. So she's kind of somewhere in the middle.
So what's the name of your denomination?
Be afraid and intimidated.
I think she was trying to make the smart play by smoothing things over with him to make her son have an established kingdom, to smooth everything over with Adonijah. But she just didn't realize what it would have done. I think she was just trying to smooth everything over to establish her son's kingdom for him.
She was around David for a long time. She had to be pretty smart.
Yeah.
Or beautiful.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
beautiful, but I mean, but she's seen some things he did over the years too. All these things, some smart moves.
Well, she got Solomon to be the heir.
Yeah. Well, no, she didn't.
Well,
God said
no,
that
I
before
know,
he was even
but
born.
yeah, but it worked out on Earth.
Yeah, it did.
She could have thought that this was going to just like appease, like just settle things. Like, look, do this for your brother, he'll go away. The problem will just go
That's
away.
what Aaron is saying.
Yeah.
Right, Aaron?
Yeah.
So why didn't she word it different to Solomon? 'Cause I'm thinking if I would have went to Jacob, I would have been like, your brother just wrote his death sentence. Let me tell you what he asked me to do. Instead of saying it the way she said it.
Well, let's see how she said it. I don't know what verse you're on, Damien.
I gotta find it there. Where are we? Okay. 19, I think. Yeah. Then Bathsheba went into King Solomon to speak to him for Adonijah. And the king stood up to greet her, and he bowed to her.
He really loved his mother.
Then he sat down upon his throne, and a seat was set for the king's mother, and she sat at his right hand. And she said, I would make one small request of you.
One little bitty thing, that's all.
Yeah. Do not refuse me. And the king said to her, ask me, my mother, for I will not refuse you. Then she said, let the king give Abishag the Shunammite to your brother Adonijah to wife.
Well, Solomon saw immediately what problem was.
And King Solomon answered and said to his mother, and why are you asking Abishag the Shunammite for Adonijah? Ask for him the kingdom also, for he is my elder brother, and he has both Abiathar the priest and Joab son of Zeruiah.
Boy, he was hot. I bet she just started shrinking. Or either inside saying, whoopee.
Yeah.
Then-
one or the other,
Yeah.
unless Jerry has an alternative.
Well, I would say that she was a little bit craftier than Solomon in this situation, because when she asked Solomon, don't refuse me, he's like, okay, I won't refuse you, what do you want? But when Adonijah asked her, she never confirmed or denied, she just said, go ahead and speak, ask me your question.
Yeah.
So she didn't say, I won't refuse you, like Solomon said to her.
And she
Well, he didn't expect her to ask him to give up the kingdom. I mean, what? No, it's not a small request. She might have thought it was small. I don't know where. I don't know what kind. I don't know. But Solomon knew it wasn't small. He knew what was in Adonijah's head.
I wonder if she was saying it sarcastically.
She wouldn't have talked sarcastic to Adonijah. That wouldn't have.
No, I'm talking
He would have
about
left town.
her talking sarcastic to Solomon.
No. No way.
Maybe she was just trying to give some information to Solomon, like, you know what this guy's saying, what he's wanting, and that was all the information he needed for him to take action.
No, she's saying, I want to ask for something. Don't refuse me. She's not saying this is what that guy said. She's not doing that. She is either putting on a great act or she's just a little Bo Peep bumping down the road. And I don't know which one it is. But it doesn't matter, because either way, Adonijah's a dead man.
You would think with her being kind of in lineage and knowing how things work like that, but people, hey, sin makes you stupid.
Yes, it does.
If you're not exactly on cue with the Spirit,
Well, sin certainly made Adonijah stupid, and the issue is whether Bathsheba was still stupid.
the Spirit of him.
I don't know.
Isn't she Ahithophel's
Granddaughter.
I mean, she's come from,
you know, yeah, she has some good stock there.
She should know.
I mean,
Yeah, she should know.
Adonijah was under a kind of suspended death sentence.
Yeah, he was on payroll.
If we find evil, you're gone. Yeah. I don't know. She might have got lucky.
Maybe he thought he was too crafty for Solomon. That wasn't going to work. Okay, go ahead. This is his response.
Then King Solomon swore by Jehovah, saying, God do so to me and more also, if Adonijah has not spoken this word at the expense of his own life.
No, we never hear another word from Bathsheba in the whole Bible.
Yeah.
She gets out of politics.
Yeah. And now, as Jehovah lives, who established me and set me on the throne of David my father, and who made for me a house, just as he said, surely Adonijah will be put to death this day. And King Solomon sent by the hand of Benaiah ben Jehoiada, and he fell upon him, and he died.
Yeah, Benaiah ben Jehoiada is going to be the general of Israel's army to take Joab's place after he kills him shortly in this chapter.
Oh, I'm remembering something. This next part, whenever we took the Old Testament class, really touched me because all along you've got Zadok and Abiathar both working together, and now you find out the hearts of those two men and which one it goes with the true priesthood and which one doesn't.
Well, there's been a direct line from Aaron all the way down to Abiathar through Eli. And Abiathar is the only one that lived of Eli's whole house. So he's the only priest, high priest, possible. But God's about to switch lines to Zadok. Because he cursed Eli, you know, cast his whole family out of the priesthood. This is when it happened.
And the king said to Abiathar the priest, Get you to Anathoth, to your fields, for you are a dead man. But I will not put you to death on this day, because you carried the ark of the Lord Jehovah before David my father, and because you were afflicted in all that my father was afflicted. So Solomon cast Abiathar out from being the Lord's priest, to fulfill the word of the Lord which he spoke concerning the house of Eli in Shiloh.
And that's the end of that lineage from Aaron down to Abiathar. Now God jumps to a different line.
And the report came to Joab, for Joab had turned after Adonijah, although he had not turned after Absalom. Then Joab fled to the tent of the Lord and grasped the horns of the altar. And it was reported to King Solomon that Joab had fled to the tent of the Lord, and that, behold, he was at the altar.
Hey, it worked for Adonijah.
And Solomon sent Benaiah ben Jehoiada, saying, Go, fall upon him. So Benaiah went to the tent of the Lord and said to him, Thus says the king, Come out. But he said, No, but I would die here. Therefore Benaiah brought word back to the king, saying, Thus said Joab, and thus he answered me. And the king said to him, Do as he has said, and fall upon him and bury him, that you remove the blood from me and from my father's house, which Joab shed without cause. And Jehovah shall return his blood upon his own head, who fell upon 2 men more just and better than he, and slew them with the sword, my father David not knowing. Abner ben Ner, captain of the army of Israel, and Amasa ben Jether, captain of the army of Judah. So their blood will return upon the head of Joab and upon the head of his seed forever. But for David and for his seed and for his house and for his throne there shall be peace forever from Jehovah. Then Benaiah ben Jehoiada went up and fell upon him, and he killed him, and he was buried in his place in the wilderness. And the king appointed Benaiah ben Jehoiada in his stead over the army. And the king appointed Zadok the priest in the stead of Abiathar. And the king sent and called for Shimei.
That's the guy that cursed David so bad. Threw rocks and dirt down on him when he was running away from Absalom.
And he said to him, Build a house for yourself in Jerusalem, and there shall you dwell. And from there you shall not go forth anywhere whatsoever. For on the day that you go out and cross over the brook Kidron, know for certain that you shall surely die. Your blood will be upon your own head. Then Shimei said to the king, The saying is good. As my lord the king has spoken, so will your servant do. And Shimei dwelled in Jerusalem many days. But it came to pass at the end of 3 years, 2 servants of Shimei ran away to Achish ben Maacah, king of Gath. And they told Shimei, saying, Behold, your servants are in Gath. Then Shimei rose up and saddled his donkey, and departed for Gath to Achish, to look for his servants. And Shimei went and brought his servants from Gath.
Well, Solomon knew he'd disobey somewhere along the line.
You must say somebody was keeping out.
Yeah. 3 years.
And it was reported to Solomon that Shimei had gone from Jerusalem to Gath and had returned. And the king sent and called for Shimei. And he said to him, Did I not make you swear by Jehovah, and solemnly warn you, saying, In the day you go forth and go anywhere whatsoever, know for certain that you will surely die. And you said, The saying is good, I understand. Therefore, why have you not kept the oath of Jehovah and the commandment that I commanded you? The king also said to Shimei, You know all the evil that your heart knows, which you did to David my father. Therefore Jehovah will return your evil upon your own head. But King Solomon shall be blessed, and the throne of David shall be established before Jehovah forever. Then the king commanded Benaiah ben Jehoiada, and he went out and fell upon him, and he died. And the kingdom was established in the hand of Solomon.
That's what he did, following his father's instructions. Telling you. Got rid of all the bad apples in the barrel, or some of them.
It always amazed me how patient all these men were. David, when we read there about Josiah, the way he slew them. He slew David's enemy, and David called his enemy more righteous than he was.
Yeah, Joab.
Yeah, Joab. I couldn't pull the name up, but just how patient they was to go along all them years until it really got, God just wanted it done. It was in time, and then it would all come back around.
Yep. Wow.
Just gonna show nobody gets by.
Nobody gets by with anything.
This ought to tell you that right here.
Yeah. David was upset when Joab murdered Abner, acting like he was coming to hug him and then stabbed him. Same thing with Amasa. David was upset. I don't know why he didn't remove Joab from being the general, but he didn't. But he knew he had to go. when it came to his son Solomon. Well, I know why David didn't do it, because he was guilty, and if he couldn't order anybody else's execution until he ordered his own first.
Yeah, that's right.
So he couldn't do it anymore. But he could tell Solomon what to do.
David was the one who told Joab to put him on the front line, let him get killed. Uriah on the front line, let him get killed. So he was responsible. He was in cahoots in that plan there.
Yeah, he knew Joab would carry it out because Joab was a murderer.
Yeah.
And God didn't even blame Joab for it. He told David, "You're the man." Nathan came and told him.
And if I remember correctly, I'm trying to read. What Joab, David's sister's son?
Joab and his two brothers, or his nephews.
Yeah. Okay.
He said, "You sons of Zeruiah are too hard for me." They were tough guys. They were unmerciful. Anybody that hurt David or was against him, they were dead. Joab could get his hands on them. Abner had fought David, so Joab killed him. Amasa fought against David for a while, Joab killed him. That's how the sons of Zeruiah were.
He wanted to kill Saul. David would.
Joab's brother tried to persuade David to kill Saul twice. David said, "No, I'm not going to touch the Lord's anointed. God will take care of all that, but not me. You sons of Zeruiah are too hard for me."
And he was a man without mercy, and he died without mercy.
Yes, he did.
He killed Absalom too.
He killed Absalom too when David asked him not to. And then he chewed David out for being sad about it. Boy, he was a tough guy. There was no forgiveness in him. And David lived by the forgiveness of God. He could not show it.
He's in a different place.
Yeah. Okay, who wants to read chapter 3? That'll be all.
I'll read it. And Solomon made an alliance with Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and took the daughter of Pharaoh.
Now God said don't do that. This is the beginning of Solomon going downhill. In the law, in Deuteronomy, it tells the king, do not multiply wives to yourself. God said that.
Can you tell us this was kind of like politics?
It was. The word alliance means a political marriage. It has to do with marriage. Solomon's worldly wise to marry the daughter of Pharaoh. They reduced the chance of Pharaoh attacking Israel. But God said don't do it. He's the one that protects Israel. But he did it. He ended up with how many wives? 700 or 300 and 700 concubines. Whew. Like that song my daddy used to sing. Solomon was the first Romeo in history we understand. He had 700 wives or more, oh yes, from every land. They used to wait in line just to sit on his knee. The one behind waited patiently. It takes a very good man to do that, boy. A very good man to do that. That's not a gospel song. But it kind of describes Saul. But he started messing up when he married these foreign women. They messed him up.
Yeah, 700 wives, I think. 300 concubines.
Well, just political marriages, you know.
Yeah.
He had plenty of money to feed them, so he's all right. Like Judge Hardy told me when he married Barbara and me, feed her, son, don't fight her, and you'll be all right. Part of the wedding scene. Well, that's a long time ago.
That's hilarious.
She feels well fed. Okay, go ahead. Who's reading?
Then he brought her to the city of David until he had completed building his house and the house of the Lord and the wall around Jerusalem. Only the people were sacrificing in the high places because a house for the name of the Lord had not been built before those days. And Solomon loved Jehovah, walking in the statutes of his father David. And he sacrificed and burnt incense in the high places.
Yeah, he must have been doing the wrong thing instead of where the altar of God was. God didn't want those high place sacrifices. The temple wasn't built yet, but the altar of God was still around, and it went from high place to high place. Matter of fact, here in this chapter, the altar of God, not the Ark of God, that was in Jerusalem in David's tent, but the altar was in a high place at Gibeon. That's where Solomon's going to go to make sacrifices next.
And the king went to Gibeon to sacrifice there, for it was the great high place. And Solomon offered 1,000 burnt offerings upon the altar. In Gibeon, Jehovah appeared to Solomon in a dream by night. And God said, "Ask, what shall I give you?" Then Solomon said, "You showed great loving kindness to your servant David, my father, inasmuch as he walked before you in truth and in righteousness and in uprightness of heart with you. And you have preserved for him this great loving kindness, that you have given him a son to sit on his throne, as it is this day. Indeed, O Jehovah my God, you have now made your servant to reign in David my father's stead. But I am a little child. I do not know how to go out or come in. And your servant is in the midst of your people that you have chosen, a great people that cannot be numbered nor counted for multitude. Therefore, give to your servant an understanding heart, that I might judge your people, discerning between good and evil. For who is able to judge this great nation of yours?" And it was good in the eyes of the Lord that Solomon asked this. And God said to him, "Because you have asked this thing, and have not asked for yourself long life, nor asked for yourself riches, nor asked for the life of your enemies, but you have asked for yourself understanding to perceive justice. Behold, I have done according to your words. Behold, I have given you a wise and understanding heart, so that no one like you has been before you, nor after you will any like you arise. Moreover, I have also given you that which you have not asked for, both riches and honor, so that among the kings there will not be any like you all your days. And if you walk in my ways, to keep my statutes and my commandments as your father David walked, then I will prolong your days." And Solomon awoke, and behold, it was a dream. And he came to Jerusalem and stood before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. And he offered up burnt offerings and made peace offerings and made a feast for all his servants.
Okay, so Solomon has incredible wisdom now, incredible insight, but it's earthly wisdom. If he had had the wisdom of God, righteousness wisdom, he wouldn't have made the mess he made. But he had great insight into earthly things, earthly human nature, what happens in, I mean, he described evaporation, condensation, rain, runoff to the ocean, evaporate. He described that in Ecclesiastes, the first chapter, before there were any scientists that understood it. Said the waters go back to where they came from, then they come back again. So he had understanding beyond what science had revealed at that time. And this story right here shows how much he understood human nature.
Then 2 women, harlots, came to the king and stood before him. And the one woman said, "If you please, my lord, this woman and I live in one house, and I gave birth with her in the house. And it came to pass on the 3rd day after I gave birth that this woman also bore a child, and we were together. No one else was with us in the house, only we 2 were in the house. Then this woman's son died during the night because she lay upon him. And she got up in the middle of the night and took my son from beside me while your maidservant was asleep. And she laid him on her bosom, and laid her dead son on my bosom. And I got up in the morning to nurse my son, and behold, he was dead. But when I really looked at him in the morning, behold, it was not the son that I gave birth to. Then the woman said, No, my son is the live one, and the dead one is your son. And this one said, No, your son is the dead one, and my son is the living one. Thus they spoke before the king. And the king said, This woman says, This living one is my son, and the dead one is your son. But this one says, No, your son is the dead one, and my son is the living one.
It'd be an easy fix now, just test the DNA. They didn't have that then.
And the king said, Bring me a sword. And they brought the sword before the king. Then the king said, Divide the living boy in two, and give half to one and half to the other.
Genius. Genius answer. Great. Just cut the kid in half and split it up. Everybody be happy. Everybody be happy except the real mother.
Yeah. And the woman whose son was alive spoke to the king, for she was moved with compassion for her son, and said, If you please, my lord, give the living child to her. Please do not put him to death. But the other one kept saying, He should be neither mine nor yours. Your men cut him in two. Then the king answered and said, Give the living child to her, and by no means put him to death. She is his mother.
So he knew the mother's passion for her child would come out if he gave that answer. That's really some wisdom.
And all Israel heard of the judgment which the king had made, and they feared the king because they saw that the wisdom of God was in him to execute judgment.
There's some wonderful lessons in those stories. This culture is beginning to be so perverse, denying human nature, that you can be influenced by that if you don't stay full of the Holy Ghost. Holy Ghost didn't fool a bit about what's a man and what's a woman.
Right. Amen.
He's never been fooled by it. Surgeries, medicines, and all the rest doesn't make a bit of difference to the Spirit of God. That's right. God created each one of you either a male or a female. And that's what you will always be in the eyes of God, no matter what men do. And nobody gets by with anything. It's all just a matter of time. When God doesn't bring immediate judgment, people get worse and worse and worse. But that doesn't mean it's not coming. And we want to have our hands clean when Jesus shows up to judge the world in righteousness.